Hi folks, this is Windows, one for Raspberry Pi 5 and the other one for Raspberry Pi 4. And guess which Windows it is? It's Windows 11. If you watch the video how to install Windows 11 on Raspberry Pi 5, you might think that it is not possible to install it on a single micro SD card and that you probably need an SSD drive, but it's not true. It is quite possible and very easy to install it to a good micro SD card, and you can run it either from an adapter that is connected to one of your USB ports or from the micro SD card slot. In this video, we're gonna answer two questions: whether it is worth to install it and which functionalities does Windows 11 bring to your Raspberry Pi 5, and the second, how to install it to have the most efficient version of Windows 11, and what hardware do you need to be able to connect to the internet. Without the internet, Windows 11 is practically useless. Microsoft Copilot is one of its key features, and it of course cannot work without the internet, without a knowledge base that is enormous and that can actually answer any of your questions that may arise from your work or from your schooling. It's much easier to do your homework with it. It also helps you manage your operating system and will help you find certain applications that you need at your work or at your system's maintenance. You can use ChatGPT 4 instead, but it is not free. On the other hand, ChatGPT 3.5 is free but has an obsolete knowledge base which dates from 2022. Ask it any question about Raspberry Pi 5 and you would get an answer that it doesn't exist yet. But this is not the only reason why would you like to install Windows 11. It is also the look and feel of Windows which gives your Raspberry Pi 5 a true desktop computer's look. Nobody can say that your Raspberry Pi 5 is not a desktop if it can run the latest version of Windows. For desktops, there are two main procedures how to install Windows 11 to your Raspberry Pi 5. The most popular one is from Windows 10 or 11 running WAR installer, because earlier versions of operating systems do not have capability of making or reading multi-partition SD cards. Like most of the operating systems, Windows needs a boot partition and a system partition to run. ESD installer can make them both and will make a copy of Windows that is already installed on your SD card. The only thing remaining to do is to perform the basic setup, which includes setting a username and password for the administrator. If you are installing Windows 11 to Raspberry Pi 5, you must also modify the boot partition to include 3 files that are needed to boot and run Windows 11 on Raspberry Pi 5. They are available as a zip archive that can be downloaded from GitHub WAR project webpage, where also source code is available. Go to raspi 5 UEFI projects/releases and download the latest release archive. Currently it is 0.2. Though source code is also available, you probably won't need it if you are not going to further develop UEFI BIOS for Raspberry Pi 5. The warproject.com website is only intended for those who want to install Windows on the supported single board computers. You can also use it to install Windows on Raspberry Pi 5. But of course, the major difference is that you have to change UEFI BIOS on the boot disk. Otherwise, installation is pretty much the same as for Raspberry Pi 2 or Raspberry Pi 3. Now let's go to warproject.com website, where you can download Windows on Raspberry Imager and Windows on Raspberry PA based installer. The latter is used in Linux installers, which automatically obtain the latest Windows image. But it is not necessary that the latest one would be the appropriate one. While with Windows on Raspberry Imager, we have to provide ESD Windows image ourselves. This image is not the same as the images for VE-based installers, which obtain them fully automatically. Windows on Raspberry Imager requires us to provide ESD image ourselves, but this is not difficult because there is a link to a specialized web page for obtaining Windows images. Windows on Raspberry Pi is actually an installation wizard. On the first screen we can select desired language and wizard mode. I prefer to select show all the options. On the next screen you can select storage drive where your Windows 11 will be installed and device type. Storage drive will be fully erased, so be careful to select the right one. The device type is number 3. It is the same as for Raspberry Pi 2 or 3. Select device type 4 only for Raspberry Pi 4 because it's not gonna work on any other model of Raspberry Pi. On the next screen, provide path to your ESD image that you have just downloaded and select the Windows edition within this image that you are about to install. The following two screens are easy. You can select the first option of both if you are connected to the internet and if you want to download the latest drivers and the latest UEFI BIOS for your Raspberry Pi, because Windows drivers and UEFI BIOS are cached when you use the first two options. They will also work even if you don't have the internet connection, but you have already used WAR to make Windows Drive. In this case, you may choose Ignore and Continue on both screens if you don't have an internet connection. The second options of both screens are intended for those who manually download the Windows drivers and UEFI BIOS. Be careful about downloading the correct version for your Raspberry Pi. You can obtain the latest driver releases and UEFI BIOS releases for Raspberry Pi 3, 4 and 5 from GitHub, WAR project and PFTF project. You can always download them from releases and they are in zip files. The source code is also available. You can use it to further develop the drivers or UEFI BIOS. Though I've tried running Windows on Raspberry Imager, also on Raspberry Pi with Windows 11 installed, I actually were able to install the application itself, and the application worked up to a point that it actually started to install Windows to the SD card. After 1% of Windows image written, unfortunately writing failed and there was some kind of error that always repeated itself. So it was, I guess, not hardware related because I used different adapters, different SD cards and so on, and of course the error was each time the same. This means that there was probably a problem in one of the programming libraries that were exe file used. So unfortunately it's not working on Raspberry Pi with Windows 11 installed. But instead you can use WAR Flasher that you can install on Raspberry Pi OS. If you wanna see the exact procedure how to use it, you can watch video installing Windows 11 on any PC, Raspberry Pi 3, 4 and 5. This is my previous video. But regarding Raspberry Pi 5, I have to say that WAR Flasher is a fully automated installer, but it doesn't make already installed Windows. It only prepares an installation media, or it can also prepare an installation media that can install Windows upon itself. So you have in place installation. Although WAR Flasher again works flawlessly, a few days ago we've been unable to use it without a patch. PA installer package verification check failed and the installation abruptly ended. I suspect that this was due to the fact that probably the file of PA installer package that was published on the server might not have been correctly signed, or verification code was wrong. Fortunately, it is relatively easy to solve this problem. You have to open install war.sh file and command line 810 or a line nearby that starts with the command download. Then manually download PA package from warproject.com website and place it into war-flasher-files directory. Create the directory if it doesn't exist yet. After copying, rename PA package to war-p_package.zip. warflasher files directory must exist on the same level as warflasher directory with the application. Please make sure that you have enough storage room on your Linux system drive to download Windows installation. To start warflasher, run install war GUI script. Installation is fully automated. You must only select correct device type. In our case, when you are installing Windows 11 to Raspberry Pi 5, this is Raspberry Pi 2 or 3, but not Raspberry Pi 4. After the installation media is created, mount boot partition and expand UEFI BIOS 2.0 for Raspberry Pi 5 over the original files in the boot partition. This will enable Raspberry Pi 5 to boot from the installation media and to start the installation. The installation will take quite some time, and after the installation you would also have to finish the setup. The setup is the same as with an ESD Windows image. Is it worth installing Windows 11 on Raspberry Pi 5? I'd say that it's much more rewarding than installing it on Raspberry Pi 4 or even on Raspberry Pi 3, because Windows 11 requires about 4 GB of RAM to perform reasonably well and to prevent swapping. With Raspberry Pi 4 you only have 3 GB of RAM available, and this is absolutely not enough. I also understand why many thought that they were unable to run Windows 11 on Raspberry Pi 4 efficiently. If Windows senses that there is not enough RAM, swapping on SD card wouldn't be a good idea, because SD card is relatively slow at writes. If you use an SSD drive instead, it's much faster because it also got some cache memory to speed up its operations. Raspberry Pi 5 is different because it can utilize all 8 GB of RAM, and despite the fact that paging is not working and swapping is therefore impossible. But it doesn't matter because you have 8 GB of memory. Raspberry Pi 5 is though quite agile in Windows 11 and feels very good when you are working with it, especially with Microsoft Copilot. If you don't have a classics PC capable of running Windows 11, or if you don't want to install Windows 11 to a classics PC, you can definitely try it with Raspberry Pi 5. It's great fun. You can also play 3D games with the same complexity and graphics quality as with Raspberry Pi OS. With Windows 11, Raspberry Pi 5 really becomes a true PC. Thank you for watching. Press like and subscribe buttons if you've liked the video. The next video is coming soon. Bye.